Welcome to Comics Bazaar, the channel of comics commentary and arcana. This video features X-Men, that is Adjectiveless X-Men, number 18, cover dated March 1993. This is a pretty dynamic cover here featuring Omega Red versus the X-Men Blue team with the additions of Iceman and Colossus. The cover by Andy Kubert and Mark Pennington. We can see Omega Red getting the better of the team, but Wolvie still fighting on there. Let's open this one up to the splash page, and this splash page to my eye appears to be an homage to Jim Lee's cover to X-Men number 7, which featured a split screen of Wolverine on one side and Omega Red on the other, so to speak. And here we have the same shot in effect of Omega Red on the left and the Soul Skinner, this new villain, on the right, and just divided by this grotesque weaving of their respective tentacles, both of these betentacled villains. So the Soul Skinner's powers appears to be psychic in nature, and he gets into the head of his victims and works on their guilt, sadness, the dark viscera in their souls in order to take them over. And so he's here trying to get into Omega Red's head, and Omega Red tells him, "You will not like what you find there." Now, when we turn the page, what we get is a double page spread, but it's one of these from the era and somewhat annoying vertical ones. So I hope you can see the top half of this. So we've got a really dynamic image here of Omega Red fighting the psychic attack of the Soul Skinner. And then if I move this up for you, you will see the credits for this. So this is a 3-part story. This is part 2, A Skinning of Souls. And the particular title of this chapter is The Crops Mature. Creative team there: Fabian Nicieza, writer; Andy Kubert, penciler; Mark Pennington, inking pages 5 to 22. So the first 4 pages inked by Dan Panosian, who at this time was inking Brandon Peterson on Uncanny X-Men. Chris Eliopoulos, letterer; Joe Rosas, colorist. Okay, so there you go. Let's turn the page here. Page 4, this one's still inked by Panosian. And we've got Omega Red asking the Soul Skinner, "Where have you gone, Mind Raper?" And that term is used twice in this issue. The second time it's used by Colossus later on. And so here we get a more full look at the character design for Soul Skinner here. And the two face off against each other. And let's see how it goes. So the Soul Skinner seems to have, whether this is psychically happening, these leeches that are attacking Omega Red, whether they're real or not, or just part of the visualization of the psychic attack, hard to know. But the Soul Skinner bests Omega Red, and then we get to see his human form, and he just looks like a bearded regular guy there. And what does he conclude by saying? He says, "So much pain and anguish inside us all now. How do we survive it all? Simple, we don't." So the Soul Skinner thrives on trauma. And now we switch to the arriving Blackbird. So between the last issue and this one, Colonel Vajan has recruited the X-Men to help out in the Siberian town that the Soul Skinner has taken over. So here we see them in this anchor image here, all together in the Blackbird. And Vajan is talking about Flag Watch and how the target, that is the Soul Skinner, was the subject of an ongoing Flag Watch. Cyclops asks, "What does that mean?" And Wolverine explains, "Trade talk, Psych. Long-term civilian plant, a mole sent to watch for any potential threats to the stability of the government." And the irony is that there is a Flag Watch number 133 spying on Colossus's family's farm, and they're keeping an eye on Illyana in particular. So, Psylocke asks, she asks, you said this mutant has been under review for over 14 years. That is correct, Ms. Braddock, he says to her, but we lost contact a month ago. We don't know how or why. And Cyclops asks, there's another mystery. If this individual is mutant, why isn't he registering on our cerebro scanners? So Vajan explains, for the same reason our mutant operatives, Alexei Garnov and Lenya Petrovna, and we saw them last issue, that's Blind Faith and Darkstar, both of whom have been in the town for days, do not. This target mutant appears to generate an electromagnetic mask, imperceptible to any of our methods of detection. Okay, and Bobby perks up, Iceman, because he recognizes, of course, Lanya and Father Garnov. We know them both, he says. And he had a bit of a relationship with Darkstar back in the Champions series days. And Vajan knows, of course. And Colossus here, nice anchor image of Colossus here, saying, we are but pawns in an endless game between those who have power and those who crave it. So Colossus not really in good form given what happened to his brother and the news he had to give his parents when he returned home. Cyclops interrupts, they're at the town. It's time to deplane, which they do here. Nice anchor image of them. And there has been some commentary on Psylocke's garb in this particular mission because they're in the freezing cold of northern Siberia, and she's put a jacket on but hasn't put any proper trousers on. So I was thinking about this and I was thinking, okay, well look, part of her not mutant training, but rather her ninja training would be to withstand extreme environments. And then of course you're putting a jacket on to keep your core warm. The extremities don't matter so much. That's my little no prize explanation for why she isn't wearing full-length trousers for this particular mission. So they go into the town, and of course Psylocke, who's a telepath, confirms that the townspeople, frozen, appear to be in some sort of vegetative state. Cyclops asks her, can she scan their minds? There's nothing to read, she tells him. So out comes the rest of the team from the Blackbird. Vajan is in some kind of armor, which he says is psi-proof. Nice shot here, another anchor image here of them emerging from the team. Notice Jubilee has got new leggings, but her leggings look like Boom Booms. Look at the colors there, the magenta pink and the inner white. So the outer is color and the inner white, and that looks a lot like Boom Booms. So I wonder what's going on there. Is the kind of like the narrative that she's borrowed them, or they were on the plane, or what? And then they come across Colossus, Psylocke, and Iceman come across Father Garnov and Darkstar. They're alive, sort of. Okay. And what happens then is the team is attacked unawares from behind by, look at these tentacles, we know who this is, Omega Red. Now Omega Red is in the thrall of the Soul Skinner. And he says to them, Wolverine challenges him and tells him to let her go. And Omega Red responds, I would, if I were not but shards of the man you once knew, Logan, torn asunder in mind and spirit, who challenges you now to do the same to flesh and bone as I will reciprocate in kind. So, challenge laid down. And then the scene switches to Red Square, Moscow, and we have a little meeting of these scientist types, this Russian general, and in the background a mysterious silhouetted figure with interesting hairstyle here. And the conversation is about a last resort, using a process on a human subject. And the general says here is uncomfortable, as the thought is we have little choice, don't we? You realize that, the scientist says, in application red flag number 133 might be killed. And the general says, I'm not inhuman, but if sacrificing the red flag is our only hope of stopping the incident from expanding, and gentlemen, left unchecked it will expand, then so be it. And so the guy in silhouette turns out to be Matsuo Tsurayaba, who is heavily invested in Omega Red. And he says, even if it costs me the services of Omega Red, especially if it costs you that, my dear Matsuo. The last time we saw Tsurayaba was in X-Men number 7 when Wolverine cut his hand off. And it does seem here that he may be missing that hand, indeed. So, now this is an interesting one-page scene where we catch up with a character introduced in the previous issue. So, our narrative caption here says, the garden entranceway to the Noiran ancestral home in the suburban prefecture of Kanagawa outside of Tokyo. Now the imagery here looks exactly like the opening imagery and scenes from Uncanny X-Men 256 that introduced Lady Mandarin, Psylocke's ninja form when she came out the other side of the Siege Perilous and was transformed by the Hand to become their ultimate assassin. And here, this guy, Lord Noiran, who's Japanese, looks incredibly like Jim Lee's rendition of the Mandarin in Uncanny X-Men 256, who was involved in the transformation of Psylocke into her Asian ninja form. But here he addresses this character as Kwannon. Very well, Kwannon. Fight against the spirit of your namesake. So Kwannon is the Japanese goddess of mercy, as you always have. Show no mercy to any and all. So she's taken out these ninjas here. But you know, the one act you must perform in order to truly regain your former place. Do you not? He asks her. And she says, indeed, Lord, I must eliminate my other self. The X-Man called Psylocke must die. So, a mystery there. What could be the relationship between Kwannon and Psylocke? And that will be explored in issue number 20, upcoming. Great anchor image here, back in Siberia, of Wolverine going bananas against Omega Red here. And Cyclops trying to order him to stop and back off. Psylocke goes in with the focus totality of her powers, her psychic knife, to blast him in the head. Doesn't work though, and she's shocked and taken aback. Great anchor image here too. And Omega Red says to her, what's this? Surprised your psychic knife found nothing to cut, ninja cur? Or are you disappointed there's no mind left to slice open? She's rescued though by Iceman, who acts quickly. But then, of course, one of Omega Red's powers is his death spore virus, which he starts extruding from his pores. And that takes out Iceman and Psylocke. And here, Cyclops, team leader, is saying to Wolverine, we've got to stay out of the range of Red's pheromone release. But Wolverine goes in for the rescue because he's still got Jubilee. And he says he's still got his healing factor to counteract the virus. But Cyclops in the background is exactly right here. He says, Logan, get back. Think I can take him out with an optic blast. Just know he's caught before he can do just that. And it is the Soul Skinner who's arrived. And if the Soul Skinner thrives on trauma, well, Cyclops has got some recent trauma for him. Many to work on. So here we have a great collage of various traumatic incidents in Cyclops' life. And we have the Soul Skinner going to work on him. So we see Scott and Alex ejected from the crashing plane flown by their parents. And we have, of course, most recently, Nathan Christopher here, wearing in this kind of grotesque looking little image here, Strife's helmet. And this is interesting because Cyclops' childhood trauma and the trauma of handing over Nathan Christopher affects the Soul Skinner. And this is what he says here. He says, no, a child, a baby, you lost, like me. Okay, so we're getting some little insight into the potential origin story for the Soul Skinner and what turned him into a villain, something to do with a baby of his own, perhaps, in the past. And so Cyclops goes unconscious to the ground, and then Soul Skinner says to, and I like the 3/4 profile here of Omega Red. He says to Omega Red, this one hurt me. I didn't think it was possible. His mind's so guarded, so tortured. How does he live with the guilt? We all live with guilt, says Omega Red. And the others have retreated when they saw the battle was futile. That's Colossus and Vasion. Skinner knows that they're not going to abandon hope so easily. Certainly not as easily as I. So he himself is in despair. We must find them before they discover a way to destroy the refuge I've sought to craft here. So the Soul Skinner thrives on trauma. He is affected and hurt by Cyclops' trauma over Nathan Christopher. And he is remarking on the guilt that Cyclops feels, and we get a sense here that this guy has some guilty feelings of his own in relation to something to do with a child. And then we pick up with Colossus and Vasion. So Vasion detects a large cluster of people in this building because his heat imaging sensors just spiked. Great anchor image of Colossus punching through the wooden wall of the building to reveal a collection of children, not in any kind of vegetative state. So there's a little mystery here. Why have these been left alone? And Vasion here says that, Colossus reasons with Vasion and says, this can only mean the Soul Skinner's power is not absolute if these children are free of his influence. And Vasion explains, as he lights up, you don't understand, X-Man. This means the red flag will not be affected either. And the scenario is quite specific. If we were to fail, then the incursion is to be destroyed. Destroyed, but how do you accomplish that without destroying the entire village? We use red flag 133. Forgive me, God forgive me, says Vasion. Let's see. What is it he's asking Colossus for forgiveness for? Then we have the arrival of this covert vehicle to the Rasputin family farm. And look, this is outrageous stuff. So these guys wearing the same armor as Vasion enter, so presumably they're under his command. That's all we can infer at this point. Or why is he apologizing to Colossus? They kick in the door, and then basically they kill Colossus's father, and then they kill his mother as she's running to protect Ileana. It makes absolutely no sense. I don't understand this. What if they have all this tech? Why couldn't they enter and just use knockout gas on the parents, tie them up, take Ileana? Why do they have to kill Colossus's parents? It's crazy. It makes no sense. There's no advantage to it. Doesn't make any sense whatsoever at all. Here's Ileana cowering under the blankets, and they grab her. And then last page, we have Colossus here thinking through the implications of what Vasion is talking about. Short of a thermonuclear detonation, what kind of a mutant do you plan to use against this mind raper? Tell me, Vasion. Because he doesn't know who Flagwatch 133 is. And Vasion says, I will tell you everything. And he explains how our scientists have been experimenting with teleportational and warp technology since your brother Mikhail first manifested his warp abilities years ago. Such powers did manifest in Red Flag 133 in an odd way when she was older than she is now. He's talking about Ileana. My sister, Colossus realizes as he turns to his organic steel form. You plan to use Ileana, but she's a child. Her powers will not manifest themselves again for years. She's been de-aged since the events of Inferno, the aftermath of Inferno. And Vajan says, I know, but there is a genetic acceleration process we've been developing. It could successfully evolve her toward adolescence again, enabling the child to access her warping powers, or it could very well kill her. And that's our cliffhanger. End of part 2 of this 3-part storyline. Next issue, the return of magic or the end of Illyana. What's it going to be? A harvest of the innocent. Quite the suggestive title. Just a couple of things to note regarding the letters page. There is a hinting here about an upcoming new X team on the drawing board, and a question as to whether Jubilee joins or not, still up in the air. A reference to Generation X. And I want to draw your attention to the statement of ownership, where we would get information on print numbers and sales. And just look at this here. If you can see this, total number of copies printed, net press run, average number of copies each issue during the preceding 12 months, 1,151,000. Actual number of single issue nearest to filing date, 894,000. Just those numbers are incredible now, given the circulation numbers today in 2023. So there you go. I do hope that you enjoyed this review of X-Men number 18. If you did, please like the video. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for more content like this.